each other. Learn to help each other.
I'm installing a 0 to 10 volt ballast in this shop light, 0 to 10 volt dimming ballast. Now the replacement ballast would fit in, there's little fingers here for the tabs where the old ballast came out. But because I knew this luminaire is going to be leading a kind of a rugged life, being dragged around, I moved the ballast down to the other end, drilled and tapped number 10 holes, and I'm using an inside lock washer on one side and an outside tooth-head washer on the other side, and this is to make sure that we break through the paint on the case. This needs to be grounded to the back shell. Well, we're going to do the same thing to this next back shell and reflector assembly, but note this one has an instant start ballast installed. And how do I know? There's only one wire coming off the ballast to here, and one wire coming off the ballast to here, okay? And down at the other end we've got no wire coming off the ballast. These are shunted together, and note that the two pins on the tube are going to be connected together as well. You're not going to find that in a dimming ballast like we're installing. Ours will be parallel. So this one is going to get some new tombstones. By the way, this starts by shoots a high voltage pulse into here. That comes all the way down to this tombstone, comes over to the other pins on the second tube, comes all the way back down and back to the ballast. And that's the whole circuit. And it starts with a high voltage pulse, so you will not see the ends of the tubes glow when this instant start starts. Out it comes. So now that we've ensured that the ballast is flush against the back of the shell for heat dissipation, and you might want to put a little thermal compound underneath it, it doesn't really matter, I don't think. We also have to ensure that somewhere in the shell we've put a big enough hole to bring our 0 to 10 volt control wiring through, and put a plastic bushing there so vibrations or whatnot does not cause the wires, 0 to 10 volt wires, to short against the shell. To the best of my knowledge, these wires should never be grounded or attached to any metal cases anywhere throughout your system. These are just the 0 to 10 volt control wires. Now I've decided in the case of this ballast that the old tombstones are coming out and I'm putting in new ones. Of course, I'm following the wiring directions that are found on the ballast, and they show the yellow wire going to the pins of the tubes in parallel. And an easy way not to mess that up is to put the two yellow wires on one connector and then just bring one over to each one. I could have also left pigtails on each of the connectors and brought them together separately with one yellow wire connecting to each to put them in parallel, but they need to be in parallel. Now if you've got a little extra wire length in the case and you want to put a little hound leg or a little crook or bend in it, that's not too terrible. However, these ballasts have a high frequency output, so you see all this extra wire here. You are not, I repeat, not going to bundle it or wrap it all up in this little space before taking it to the ends. That creates a big coil, a big loop in there, and it can damp out the high frequency signal. So you really want to trim and dress these wires properly. So they're probably going to come off right about there-ish. And the instructions for the lamp holders specify a 3/8 inch strip length. You're going to want to measure that at least once so that you at least know what 3/8 inch looks like. When you insert the wires into the tombstones, they should seat fully and firmly all the way down, and you shouldn't see any exposed conductor once you've firmly inserted these wires into these wire bales that are self-catching and connecting. Alright, now when we inserted our wires into the lamp holders, We made sure we tugged on them to make sure they weren't going to come back out. When we installed our screws and our lock washers on our ballasts, we ensured we did not catch the insulation underneath the screw or the washer. And then, keeping things rather neat without a bunch of little kinks and a bunch of coils or wadded up sections of wire, we should be ready to go. So the next thing we're going to do is reattach the back shell. And let me state that you must have a grounded metal surface within close proximity of the bulbs. It's part of their starting circuit. You can get bulbs that don't want to strike up. You can get bulbs that are spiraling or raccoon tailing or whatever you want to call it. And you can get bulbs that simply don't light up as bright as they should if you're not certain that the back panel is connecting to the back shell. So make sure that's solidly grounded. Now when we reinstall our reflector, we make sure that we're not getting any wires caught between the front and the back of the shell. If you can't work them into position while you're assembling it, you're going to want to use a piece of cellophane tape or something like that to keep those wires out of the way. Just make sure they're not going to spring out through some little slot after the cellophane tape wears out, which it will. After reassembly, we go ahead and fire the lamp up and let the new bulbs burn in for a few minutes with our control wires open. You should have a gray one that's negative and a violet one that's positive. These will all the violets and all the grays will be connected together and brought to your controller input, if you will. Input, output, however you want to call it. Now, shorting the two control wires together are going to dim the ballast down as far as it's going to want to go. Alright, opening them, well, after about 100 hours they'll be about as bright as they're ever going to be. Shorting the two wires together, down it goes. Okay, so that's your test for your 0 to 10 volt dimming ballast. Open all the way up, shorted all the way down.
Isn't that a tremendous achievement?